All right, so good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for our safety webinar covering an overview of safety standards and regulations. In this webinar, we'll be discussing various industry regulations related to overhead lifting equipment. Topics covered will include OSHA regulations applicable to overhead cranes and slings, as well as ASME safety standards that apply to overhead cranes, hoists, slings, and hardware. We will also touch on HST performance standards along with guidelines from the Crane Manufacturers Association of America, AWARF, and WSTDA. My name is Gisela Clark. I'm the e-marketing specialist at Columbus McKinnon and will be your host for today's webinar. Presenting today will be Peter Cook. He's our Columbus McKinnon training manager. We are recording the session today, and the recording link will be added to our YouTube channel. All in attendance will receive a link to the recording. Everyone is in listen-only mode, so we encourage you to ask questions in the Q&A pane, which so many of you just tried out. We appreciate that. We'll take 5 minutes at the end to answer your questions. And as a side note, after each webinar we do, we select one of the questions to be used in our blog the following week. And so if your question's chosen, we're going to send you a Columbus McKinnon promotional item. Based on the amount of snow, I think this month it'll probably be a CM beanie, which is our black caps, which are in high demand always, or maybe a pair of work gloves. I'll let you pick. So send us your questions, and if you're chosen, we'll send you some fun stuff from CM. Thanks for your attention, and now I'll turn the meeting over to Peter so we can begin.
Okay, thank you, Gisela. So as Gisela said, we'll just kind of be brushed upon what standards cover what types of equipment so that you're aware of them. So the OSHA regulations for overhead cranes, ASME standards for overhead cranes, hoists, slings, and rigging hardware, HST performance standards, Crane Manufacturers Association, who they are, AWARF, and WSTDA. Again, this webinar is not a substitute for any OSHA or safety standard by any means. It's just kind of an awareness, and that we do encourage all of you in attendance that if you have equipment that's referenced in these standards that you're using, that you obtain those standards and thoroughly read them yourselves and try to understand them and ask questions if need be. So I love this picture. I use this picture a lot in all my slides. This is a very simple lift. You can find this just about in any type of manufacturing facility, auto shop. So it's just basically a simple jib. But if you just look at all the regulations there, or safety standards, I should say, that's required, it's a pretty extensive lift. We go from monorails to underhung hoists, the hooks for the hoist, slings are being used, below the hook lifting devices, rigging hardware. OSHA is involved a little bit with the slings there. So there's a lot of stuff to know, and just so you just think about that simple lift there, that operator or inspector, the owner of that crane and that equipment needs to know what's in those standards to make that equipment safe to use, and the inspection criteria that is required for those. So we start off with OSHA, which is the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Also provides information on training and assistance to workers as well. And workers use OSHA to file complaints that they believe that the employer is not following, or if there's any other serious hazards. So OSHA is kind of our watchdog to keep our work environment safe, and we want that. We want to be able to go to work and work in a safe environment. Some of our places of employment can be hazardous. It's just by the nature of what the application is or what we do. So we want to do things and follow the rules of the lifting and what OSHA says and what other safety standards say. One of the things that OSHA has in lieu of, if they don't have something directly written for a certain product or application, they do have what's called the General Duty Clause, which is kind of their catch-all. And basically, in that clause, it says that each employer and employee shall act in a safe manner. The employer shall have a workplace environment free of hazards. And so that's there, and that's your right to be working in that type of environment. So if you see anything that is not being done or is not being addressed, that's what really OSHA is for, to help get compliant. All right. A lot of people, when they do training and things of that nature, they kind of put OSHA in a light as in a bad light and say, oh, you don't want the OSHA guy, you do want them around, you do want them to be safe. And so I actually applaud their efforts, and it's a hard job that those inspectors do, but we want to be compliant with them, and you should be thankful if you see an OSHA inspector show up to your facility, because it's keeping you and your employees safe. The last thing we want is anyone to get hurt. So what are some of the things that Columbus McKinnon makes that OSHA covers? It's OSHA 1910-184 is the sling OSHA standard or regulation, I should say, and that covers alloys, chain slings, wire rope, metal mesh, natural synthetic fiber, and synthetic web. Now, the problem with OSHA standards is this standard has really not been updated all that much. It's a very antiquated standard, and they don't really update it. And so really what you want to do is you want to understand what OSHA has in their document, but then you want to reference ASME B30.9. That standard gets that's a safety standard. It's not an OSHA standard, but it gets updated by industry experts every 3 years. And I sit on that committee, and we're currently in revision. We just released the I'll get into it in this presentation. We just released earlier in the year the ASME B39, the latest revision, and we're already working on changes for the next revision. So we're constantly updating and meeting and making sure that stays relevant, and we address every issue in the industry. And there's people from all different types of sectors of the industry that sit on that committee to give their input. Another one is OSHA 1910.179, which is overhead and gantry cranes. These are top running bridge and single girder or multiple girder construction utilizing top running hoist and trolley. You can see I have that underlined. That's important. That's the scope of their law, the way the law is written. So if it's not top running and a top running hoist, it does not fall under 1910.179. And by reference, what they did when they came out with 1910.179, they referenced in the ASME B30.2 standard from 1967. Okay, so really when you're reading that 1910.179 OSHA regulation, you're really reading an outdated B30.2 1967 version. So again, you want to know what OSHA says in there, you want to read it, make sure you understand it, but then you want to reference ASME B30.2, again, because they update it every 3 years. ASME, again, is not the law, so there might be more stringent stuff in there that may not fall under OSHA, but we want to do our best to use the most stringent of the two. So whatever the most stringent of the two is, that's what I always recommend doing. If it's in OSHA, there is no advisory language. OSHA is always a must-do, where ASME does have advisory language. And again, ASME is a voluntary safety regulation where no law really upholds it. But in the court of law, if there was an accident were to happen, that these definitely could be used in the court of law for a jury trial or anything like that if there was an accident. So this standard does not apply to underhung cranes, monorails. So what do we do when OSHA does not have that? Where do we go? What do we reference? So that's where we go reference the ASME standards, such as B11 for monorail systems, underhung cranes, 16 for underhung hoist, and 17 overhead top running cranes, but utilize an underhung hoist and trolley. But if it's a high risk of injury, they will issue the general duty clause. So, for instance, let's just say safety labels are required on equipment such as a pendant to remind the operator of the do's and don'ts of the equipment. Now, if that label was missing, would OSHA issue a general duty clause because that label was missing? Probably not. The risk of an injury from not having that label isn't there. However, it's required to be there by ASME, and you want it to be there, but there's no risk of injury. Now, if they came in and said, hey, there's no inspections, we never done inspections on this equipment, we have no records of inspection on this equipment, OSHA could cite you under the general clause, because that is a huge danger by not having proper inspections done, that putting your employees at risk. So they could issue the general duty clause in that case on the equipment that's not covered there. So I hope I explained that kind of, just in a brief kind of summary there of what would the general duty clause be issued for. So then we got ASME Society of Mechanical Engineers, and it's a voluntary group consisting of subject matter experts from various industries. I can just speak for my ASME group that I meet with on slings. We have people from the nuclear industry, experts from the chain industry, experts from the wire rope industry, from the synthetic industry, um, military. So it's the nuclear. I don't know if I mentioned it already, but there is people from all walks of life in the industry that help us write these standards where maybe I'd never see an application used in the industry I'm in. They see it, and so, hey, we need to write a safety note about doing something such as this practice. So that's why we're always updating. Okay, so let's start off B30.1, and Gisela, this is right up your alley. Gisela used to do a lot of training for the Duff Norton jacks and actuators and things of that nature, and that actually falls under B30.1, and that includes skates and things of that nature. So that's something that we make under our Duff Norton, and so anytime you're using hydraulic jacks, hand-operated screw mechanisms, air lifting bags, industrial rollers, air casters, that's the standard you want to reference. And so we'll move on from there. So there's a standard for that. So basically what we're going to get, there's a standard for everything that you need to think about, that every little piece of equipment has a committee that meets on this. Okay, you just got to know which one to reference. All right, I mentioned this a little bit under the OSHA subject, but top running cranes, trolley and hoist, of course, OSHA 1910 and 79, but we have ASME B30.2, and the current version right now is ASME B30.2 2011, and currently working on the 2016 revision, so that will be coming out shortly. So there'll be an updated version to that. So keep your eyes out for it. If not already, I should have checked the website to see when that was coming out. But so keep your eyes on it. There'll be a new revision coming for that, and you always want to keep the latest revision on hand and update yourself anytime there's a new revision coming out. So there's your so keep an eye out for that one. And you can see a picture with the top. That's top running hoist. That would fall under that standard. Winches B30.7. So if you have a winch, you would reference this standard. And so they have a tentative meeting scheduled to start work on a new standard in 2016. So I don't have what one is, but they just came out with this standard not too long ago. I think it's only like 4 or 5 years old. So they'll be updating that and start meeting. So you probably won't see a new one for winches probably till late sometime next year to start work on it, because they're just starting to update that now.
Peter, just a quick question. How long have you been involved on these standard committees?
Right now on the B9 committee, I think I'm going on my 8th year on that committee.
Okay.
Being on that committee. And we meet about every, depending on how much revisions we do, it's at least three times a year, and then we have web meetings and things of that nature to go along with it.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks. I know you've been involved a long time.
We may call special meetings.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
So B9 is the sling standard. I mentioned OSHA 1910-184. Well, ASME has it B30.9. Again, covers the same thing, but it's synthetic fiber yarns, protective covers. We have new synthetic slings and things of that nature coming on the market with Dyneema and all that right now is being updated into the standard, and we just came out with a new revision to that. That's a 2014 revision that came available in February of 2015. So it's coming up to its 1 year. So which means that how ASME works is once they publish it in print, which was February 2015, it has 1 year of time to get out there and people to be aware of it, and then after that 1 year period, that's when that standard then that you want to be compliant to that standard. So this one had a really big change from older versions. The scope of it was changed from when you look at the scope, it talked about lifting. So if you were doing any type of tensioning or anything like that with slings, then this really didn't fall under that. But even though you were using the same equipment, so we wanted to address that there was really nothing out there for tensioning. So we moved it to, instead of lifting, to load handling. Okay. To include non-vertical movement of the load, so you can have horizontal movement, things of that. And so, and all the explanations of hitches, it always talked about a vertical hitch, and so we changed that to a straight line hitch to capture load handling. All load charts were removed. The load charts were hard to keep up, and where the numbers were coming from, and what manufacturer, where you had to go to, and so what we try to do on these committees is we don't want to be a design standard or anything like that, and they're more of a safety standard. So if you start publishing charts, even though the charts are more for reference, people start to think that those charts, that if we publish them, that all manufacturers have to adhere to those charts, and that's not really what we want to do. We want to be in the safety business, so we now will reference you to the manufacturer of your equipment to get the load charts, to reference their load charts. Okay, so it's a total rewrite of that standard. So if you have an older version, like the 2011 was the version prior to that, you want to get this new standard and read it. A lot of updates to it. From all those standards, no matter what you have, whether you have slings, overhead cranes, hoists, chain falls, lever tools, when it comes to the hook is all referenced under B30.10. It'll reference you back to the 10 standard for inspection criteria and markings for hooks. So you have to have another standard, B30.10, for the hook references. Okay, and the current version is 2014. Right now, there's no major technical changes being made, so that's the current version that's out there right now. B3011, monorail systems and underhung cranes. Okay, so there's in the process right now, and I'll talk about B17 in a minute, that the ASME is currently working on combining the B11 and the B17 standards because they're very, very close to one another. The 11 is a underhung bridge system, underhung monorail cranes, where the 17 is a top running bridge, but the hoist is a monorail and underhung on that bridge. So it's really, they're really pretty close to one another as far as the equipment wise. So they are combining them two. No date has been given for the new release, but those two will end up being combined. And I'll have another slide on 17 to kind of show you. But if you look in the the lower right, or excuse me, lower left, you can see that the underhung trolleys on there, in which everything would be underhung, and you can see the monorail type system for a workstation crane, where the bridge and everything is underhung on that as well. Okay, jib cranes underhung, the hoist is underhung. B30.16, so if I had B11 where I had an underhung crane system, and when it comes to the hoist of that system, if it's underhung, it'll reference me to B30.16 for the usage and inspection of that hoist. So I have to have three standards in this case. I'd have to have B30.10, B30.11, and B30.16 if I had a crane and hoist and with the hooks and everything like that, to understand what's required of me to make that equipment compliant. Okay, and the current version right now is B3016 2012. Work on 2017 revision began in 2015. So shortly, in the end of this year, you'll see a release coming for the newest version of that. Okay, and you can see there is no, in this case, if it was a hoist by itself, just on a clamp, you would only reference 16 and then also 10 for the hook. But the minute you put it on a trolley, that then references another standard of the B11. So here's 17. Again, I mentioned it was being combined to B3011. You can see top running bridge with the end trucks there is top running, where in the 11 standard that would be underhung instead of top running. And then we also have a underhung monorail. You have a monorail beam bridge with the underhung hoist, so that falls under 17. Okay. Blow hook lifting devices. So if it's not a sling, actually I just caught this right out. Disregard the lever tool there. That doesn't fall under B20, so that lever device does not fall under B20. But the B20, like lifting beams, clamps, lifting clamps, plate dogs, people will call them, all will fall under B20. There was talk of moving clamps to 26, and that's not going to happen now. The beam clamps are going to stay at under 20, so they were kind of trying to look for better homes for different types of products to get more of a standard written for it. Plans are to expand the standard cover critical lifts, standards that haven't been maintained for the nuclear industry, so are some of the updates coming about. So there you see 21. This is where the lever hoist would be captured under, and current version is 2014. and it was just rewritten. Really no significant changes. They were just, some formatting and wording changes, things of that nature to make it to read a little bit better is how they changed that. So it is a lever. It is another type of hoist. A lot of people think chain falls and lever hoist fall under the same category, where chain falls are in with the powered hoist under 16, where lever tools are under 21, and there's some differences there when you read through that of what's required on there.
Peter, would now be a good time to do our first polling question?
Sure.
Okay. All right. So what ASME standard covers hook inspection for hoists? Is it B30.9, B30.10, B3011, or 3016? If you guys could vote. If you're on an iPad, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to vote, but you can always share your answer on the Q&A pane. Excellent. And just while we're doing this for a second, I know many of you have been typing in questions. We're going to hold them for the end, so they will be addressed, I promise. All right, Peter, it looks like it's pretty much divided. 76% think it's B30.10. We've got a handful who think it's B30.9, about 10%, 10%, 10% on the other three, roughly. So share what the answer is, please, Peter.
Yep. Inspection for the hook would fall under B30.10, so you would have to reference the 10 standard for the hook. You will find some information in all those standards on hooks, but it will reference you back to B30.10 for hook inspection and usage.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Rigging hardware, so all that little stuff that you didn't think about, eye bolts, turnbuckles, shackles, swivel hoist rings, compression hardware, rigging blocks, all that falls under rigging hardware. And the latest version is 2015. They started work last year, and it's ongoing, and much discussion has been proposed on wording and required evidence of inspection and things like that. Because these particular items, they need to be inspected, but no written record at this time needs to be done on there because they're not serialized or anything of that nature. So basically, it's one of those things where, oh yeah, we inspected it, but there's no paperwork to follow with those things. So that's what the discussion is on. How do you have evidence of inspection? And a lot of people do a good job about doing that. I know Columbus McKinnon has revised their shackles and put the current shackle that you buy today has a raised pad on it where you can stamp your serial number on that special pad designed for that, so you can serialize it. That's for inspections. We did an RFID webinar a little while back, but we can add RFID chips to them, and that helps in doing inspections and keeping up on inspection procedures. So that's what's going on in the rigging hardware world, and that's what you would reference for the safe use and inspection of that equipment. There's a new volume in the works right now, B30.30, ropes and work. What that is right now you have B11, B17, you have B16, you have .2, then you have all the mobile crane safety standards, which I'm not getting into in this. And all of those standards will have different criterias for inspection of the wire rope. And so you would have to, in a lot of cases, a lot of companies use all that equipment, so they would have to buy quite an extensive library to usage of the rope and inspection of the rope in order to do so. They're kind of making a wire rope standard that that you can reference that standard for inspection of the ropes, because it does get very confusing. So that is currently in the works now. So that'll be a new volume. There's no date of when that is going to be released at this moment, but there will be a new standard coming out for wire ropes usage, safe usage, and inspection. There is a P30.1 ASME standard, kind of sits out of the B30, outside the B30 standards, and that's for load handling activities. And anyone that wants to establish planning considerations and practices that apply for load handling equipment when moving loads vertically or horizontally. So it kind of goes through the planning stages for doing critical lifts and planning lifts and things of that nature. So it kind of goes along with more construction type cranes, but you could easily just apply it to overhead cranes and to reference that, easily change things up to make it go along with overhead cranes as well. And so that's really good, because the planning involved in certain lifts and what you need to, all the considerations that you need to consider that you may not think of when lifting load, hey, we never thought of that this could happen, or to check certain things out that's in the standard. So you want that's another one, a very good one that you want to purchase. Right now, the committee is working on global requirements that we continue to refine in an effort to maintain consistency among the B30 standards, so that the wording from standard to standard is the same. The translation comments were ballot and discussed. Major changes involves paragraphs, which now reads, and I'll read this verbatim: obtaining translations of written safety information and manuals as provided by the manufacturer is a responsibility of the crane user performing the operation, use, inspection, and maintenance of the covered equipment so that their employees can read and understand the instructions and recommendations. Some refinement may follow, but the burden of supplying the information will remain that of the crane user. So we do a lot of it, hey, if we're talking about something and it's part of another piece of equipment at a different standard, we really are trying to make it read the same, where, in some cases right now it reads a little bit differently. ASME, at one time, these were ANSI standards, now taken over by ASME. These HSD standards, these are more manufacturing standards or performance standards that a manufacturer would reference. And I just put them in here just for thought. If you ever someone asks, they want to see if something's compliant with an HST standard. This is now taken over by the ASME group. HST meeting report is actively reviewing and revising these series. The committee was finally able to enlist a representative from the Navy to review the non-mandatory appendixes of each volume. So they have a gentleman that will represent the Navy in this endeavor. And here is some of the performance standards. Again, this is more of a manufacturer, but I'm just throwing it out there. Electric chain hoist, hand chain hoist, standards for lever hoist, overhead electric wire rope hoist, air chain hoist, air wire rope hoist, so all that. So beyond the safety standards, which is a user inspection, the ASME B30 standards are more of a user and an inspector and training standard, where these are more of a manufacturing standards to adhere to.
That's a lot to keep up with. Gosh.
Yeah, it is, and it shows that one of the things I want to make clear is, when you're buying from a reputable company, this equipment from a reputable company, they adhere to all of this stuff, all these standards and more than I'm even covering in here. So it's a testament to the product that's out there, that some of the things that people do to it or do wrong with it, that accidents don't happen because the equipment is able to hold up. And so these committees and the OSHA and all these people that volunteer their time really do a fantastic job of keeping the world safe, and using this equipment. And so I know, working for CM, we're on these committees where we help, we give information, we adhere to them, and we do our very, very best every day to make a safe product for everybody. But it all comes down to you can only make something so safe, and you got to have a competent person operating the equipment, and that comes, the training aspect then comes into there, and which is why I'm doing this today, is to make everybody aware that, hey, these are out there. You need, if you have this equipment, or maybe you have all the equipment I've talked about today, you should really have all these standards for your maintenance people to go over with your operators and the owners, and know what's required and what's needed to make your work environment safe.
Yep.
CMAA, that's the Crane Manufacturers Association of America. This isn't a safety standard. They basically have technical papers and technical committees. So it's similar to ASME, except they're not sanctioned by ANSI or anything like that. They will write. They have industry experts, and these are more of engineering committees, but they do publish great information for the crane industry. So they're preparing to publish CMAA Specification 78/2014. Again, that's the year that they started doing the revision, so that's why it would be called that year. Even though it may be coming out in 2015 or 16, they would still call it 2014. So the chapters of specification include general information, technical qualifications, job site safety, crane inspection and maintenance, OEM parts, and crane service classes are all in there. HMI, in conjunction with OSHA, has published a number of new technical sheets and best practice sheets with regard to hoist safety, which are available on OSHA and HMI websites. So again, a lot of great information. People that are looking for safety programs and where do they begin? This is a great place to begin, along with the ASME standards and what to get used to it. And then, see what training courses are out there as well that help as well. I know like CM's training and what I do, ski sleds. We give you the cliff notes basically. We kind of go through what the important stuff, and so, but we still recommend that you get, even though you take our courses, hey, you still need to get this stuff. Another technical committee, Association for Wire Rope Fabricators. This is the people that eat, breathe, and sleep with wire rope. They know everything, the ins and outs of wire rope, and so they have published documents for wire rope and things of that nature. They'll make this committee here will make recommendations to ASME committees and say, hey, this is some testing we have done. And so ASME then will decide if they want to make that part of their safety standard or not and incorporate it in there, as well as they will look at what's written in ASME and incorporate it into their stuff. So it kind of goes back and forth. Some of the same people that are on the ASME are on this board as well, are on these committees as well. And all the like rigging houses a lot of the rigging houses that manufacture wire rope slings and deal with wire rope for cranes and stuff attend these safety meetings that are a few times per year. We have the Web Sling Tie Down Association. So even though we have OSHA for slings and ASME B9, this is the Web Sling Tie Down. These are the Web Sling Tie Down experts, and they do all kinds of testing, and they meet as well, and they make recommendations to ASME. So they'll bring their lab reports and findings to ASME and say, hey, can you incorporate this into your standards? And it's reviewed, and if it's valid enough that it may be approved to go through the main committee to be part of the standard. So, this is the front lines for their web slings, is kind of the start of how things get involved with ASME and down the line, or even OSHA might even at one day may incorporate some of their things. So a lot of safety going on with this. So
definitely. Before we take questions, I'm going to have one more polling question, and we did get 4 to 5 questions that were asked that were very good. So here we go. Here's the other polling question. So what ASME standard covers chain falls? Again, is it ASME B30.9, 10, 11, or 16? So what ASME standard covers chain falls? I'll give you another couple seconds. All right, Peter, it looks like 15% think it's B30.9. Oh, it's changing. 20% think it's B30.9, 30% think it's B30.11, and the remaining 50 think it's B3016. Can you answer that for us?
Yeah, the slings for chain slings is B30.9.
Okay.
Which also covers all slings. We've got wire rope, metal mesh, synthetic slings are all in there.
For the chain falls. Oh,
chain fall. I thought you said chain slings. I'm sorry. I don't see the questions.
Yeah, the standard that covers the chain falls.
Chain falls fall under B30.16. I'm sorry about that, everybody. Yeah, B30.6. I wrote that question too, and I.
Okay. It's got to down too quick. I'm sorry. Yeah. So those of you that voted.
Underhung hoist. That would be a chain fall was the underhung hoist, so that would fall under 16.
Okay. All right. Now, like I said, we got a bunch of questions, so I'm going to go down the list. Hang on one second. I've been kind of telling you all the number that you fall into, so let me grab number 1.
So, yep. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. What were you going to say, Peter?
No, I can see. It took me just a half hour just to mention those safety standards, by the way, and I just scratched the surface. You can imagine diving into those. We have several weeks of courses that cover these standards and usage. So I just want to make that point. It takes all these courses that we have revolve around reviewing those standards and doing hands-on and things of that nature to understand all that what's required to use this equipment. So I just want to make that out there. It took me just a half hour just to go whip through them like I did right now. So, and these are fairly thick documents, so you can imagine.
Well, we've got a few people making comments about the documents and how much information there is. But what I like, I know I've been at the company quite a while, and since I started working with you, Peter, on all these webinars and blogs, what I think is so nice is that you're intimately involved. I mean, you are on these committees, you are involved with all these people, so you know how much goes in to the writing of these standards and the inputs given by others in the industry, all to promote safety. So We're getting a real kind of an insider's perspective on the time and investment and just, the overall protocol involved. So here we go. Question number 1. Please elaborate on the connection with enforced regulations by OSHA and ASME. Peter just said ASME is not the rule. Why is it referenced constantly? Why do they charge so much for a copy of the regulations? And how do the two organizations work together?
That's a good question. Yeah, ASME is a voluntary standard, so there is no, OSHA cannot enforce ASME unless it's a willful, like a danger. So, for instance, there's imminent danger that someone's going to get hurt. Can they then issue a general duty clause, and then they can kind of reference some ASME stuff, saying, hey, this is how you would you can correct this situation. But there, if OSHA, if there's no law written for it, it can't be enforced. So, let's just take, for example, the speed limit is posted at 35 miles an hour, and I'm going 35 miles an hour, and I was pulled over, and under normal conditions, and the police said, well, I really want you to go 20. I really want you to go 20 miles an hour. Well, they can't do that. The law is not written that way. I'm allowed to go the speed that I want to go. So that's kind of, if you understand what I'm saying, that if there's no law to enforce, it'd be like saying, hey, everyone has to wear red shoes because it's a good thing I can spot people easier on the road. There's no law written for that. If there was a safety standard written, say, hey, that's a good idea to wear red shoes, you'd be more visible. I can't be fined for it if it's not a law. So that's kind of facetious, but that's kind of where I'm getting at. ASME is again, it's the industry experts. It's constant. You shouldn't wait for government to police you, to tell you what to do. And so we have done an excellent job in this industry of using ASME as our law almost. Again, OSHA is the law. How the two work hand in hand? Well, we some of the OSHA people we'll bring in to help us understand some of their situations or accidents that happen, where their accident reports can be brought to our attention that, hey, we need to write some safety standards in there and things of that to help control this. So we all do work hand in hand, and we all know each other and sit, go to common meetings and things of that nature. And so we're doing our best to police this industry. And so by adhering to both, and what the most stringent is, will make your environment the safest. And that's what you want to do. You just don't want to do the bare minimum, like, oh, well, it's not covered by OSHA. Let's put it this way. If you just did what the bare minimum was, that's your D report card. You got a D. You just passed. And how many people are proud to get that D? Well, I'm not proud of that. If I just said, oh, geez, I barely passed, I'd probably brush up on what I need. I really need to study this more. I'm not really, even though I passed, I still need more work at it. And if you're not that way, then you really don't belong in the industry. You really need to do the best you possibly can for your employer and environment and your people that you work for.
That's well said. That's really what it boils down to at the end of the day. Yeah. Okay, Peter, next question. As an inspector tech, what is the minimum frequency of inspection we can offer to our customer crane owner according to regulations?
Well, the minimum inspection is at least once a year, depending on the severity of service. So what's called a periodic inspection. That's your written report where you would look from top to bottom, looking for deficiencies according to the manufacturer. Again, in all this too, you always, real quickly, just want to stop for a second. You also want to, in conjunction with all these safety standards and laws, you also want to reference the original manufacturer's written procedures and documents and maintenance books for this equipment as well, because that is the most binding. But the minimum you could do is your periodic inspections for a lot of this equipment, where it's once a year, and looking everything over for the manufacturer and ASME and OSHA and what they're saying, and so you basically do a top to bottom checklist of that equipment. We do teach operators and things of that nature and maintenance crew. Maybe they're not doing the periodic inspections, but they should be doing frequent inspections that are in between the periodics. And I teach our crane operators or hoist users and riggers to do their daily inspections. Hey, before you use this, if you're using this equipment for the first time in that work shift, then you should just do from the ground level, look things over, see how run everything, see how it's, be educated on what to look for, and say, hey, I can't use this equipment today. Maybe you're hearing a funny sound that you never heard before. be concerned, or the latch that was on the hook is no longer there. That should be a concern to you on the hoist or crane. And hey, why is it not there? Did it just break off, or did the hook break and the hook pull open? See, these are all red flags that should be happening.
Okay, we have got a ton of questions and we are running out of time. So what I'm going to do is, as I said, we're gonna wrap up. I'm gonna have one more question asked, and then we will have Peter. I'll send him those that you've asked, and he'll respond directly. Okay, I apologize, but we have so many people that have responded. A lot of questions about tie-down chains, about certain standards, but yeah, a lot of questions, Peter, about inspection requirements. Maybe maybe there's a blog or two we can share in the follow-up email to address that. Todd, I know you asked a question, a very specific question. I'm going to have Peter respond directly to you on that one. But how about this one?
If there's some specific questions and asking, you know, what's best for me to do is go into the standards for them and answer the, you know, because I don't want to paraphrase. I by no means have every single standard opened up, and it would just take me a long time to find it.
Exactly.
I could paraphrase, but I don't want to say something that's not quite right. So I want to go in and, you know, if they have specific to the standard, I'll answer them in an email, no problem, and reference them to the exact paragraph where you find it.
Yeah, and Larry, your question about the tie-down chains that may have tags, we have a blog article right about that, which I can send you. Let me just ask this one question, and then we'll go to just cover a few training sessions we have coming up. Is there a standard that references a required paint color for overhead cranes?
Not that I know of. I've never heard of you have to use this certain. Majority of the people use a yellow because it stands out, so it's just something visible. But you know, we do have we paint Hoist black for the entertainment industry, so it camouflages it so that when you're watching your concert, you're not looking at bright yellow, orange Hoist all over the place.
No, definitely. Well, and those are good. Like I said, we got a lot of great questions, and the paint color is an important one because of visibility. But as I said, we've run out of time, so we're just going to cover one last thing, and then we'll let you all go.
By the way,
yes,
that's a very good question. And I've never run across it, but if anyone does know of something that, hey, this is where it references paint color or something to that aspect, I'd like to know.
So you're not aware of anything right now that would?
No, not that I'm aware of, but it doesn't mean it's not out there. But I'm not aware of anything. You know, I've seen all different colors out there.
Okay, all right, Peter. If you can go to the training slide and just speak to that quick before we wrap up about some of the upcoming classes we have going on.
So you can see here we have a lot going on in Charlotte in the next month or two. A lot of our stuff is sold out. All of the rest of January and February is sold out. And I just put on, we'll be on our website, the cmcodepot.com, through September, a lot of our classes that we're having, so that you can go to our website. We're constantly updating that. So sometime today, then up through September, we'll be on there. I just gave our representative from CM the updates at early this morning, the new schedule. So there's, you can see rigging gear and sling inspection workshop that will cover the OSHA and ASME 9 and rigging inspection of that. Overhead crane hoist inspection in Omaha, Nebraska. That's the entire system from top to bottom. Those are your periodic inspections. It's not a repair class. It's just an external system inspection and writing up deficiencies is what that covers. The chain hoist technician certification, that is the repair course for chain hoist. So that's the one where we don't talk about the entire systems like we do in the overhead crane, but we talk about the nuts, bolts, torque settings, and brake settings, and wires, and everything like that, and why this goes here and that. So that's more of a repair course for that. So the two are quite different. And we just released some new online recertification courses for those that have taken some of our courses and they're expiring. We have some online recertifications for chain hoist repair. You can go online and recert and up your recert for 2 more years. Same with the overhead crane inspection. There's an online recert that you can take a little bit of training, and there's tests involved, and then we look at your scores and things of that nature, and we'll issue a recert. So we're always releasing new things. I just want to mention real quick, one of the new courses that we just got done with it yesterday. It was the second time we ran it. We have a new course called overhead crane install course, and we've just gotten some excellent feedback on it. And it's going to be free of charge for a while, for the next couple times, just because it's a new course and we're panning out all the details and what we want to incorporate in it and more of. But it involves installing and running, setting rails and squaring up the rails and installing top running crane, monorail cranes, jib cranes. So it's more of an install than on course and what to do when you're installing and what to make sure everything's in place and that it's right.
Peter,
so that's a really good course.
If they're interested in taking that class for free, should I just have them contact you or send me an email?
Yeah, or they can contact me or go right to the website and register at cmcodepot.com and see what the dates are and register for it.
Gotcha. What is the class called again?
Crane install.
Crane install. Okay, so they can go directly to cmcodepot.com and register, and it would be free for the next 2 classes. Great tip.
Right, and that one's more CMAA heavy, where it's CMAA is really one of the documents. It's kind of takes like the Whiting Crane Handbook a little bit and some of that, and those of you in the crane industry know what I'm talking about. It really does a good job of talking about the proper installation. Even we don't go in as far as fabrication, but some of these standards even go as far as fabrication of bridges and things of the crane system. So a lot of that is covered in the install course.
Okay, excellent. If you can just flip to the last page as we wrap up. As I said, you'll be getting an email from Peter with answers to your questions. I apologize that we didn't have more time, but there were tons coming in. Just really quick, if any of you are on social media, we are very engaged there. I'm going to send a link to our blog because there are a ton of articles that will kind of address some of the questions you brought up. But we are on Twitter under CMCO Live or CM Entertainment if you're in the entertainment industry. We have a YouTube channel where all of our safety webinars are that we've done for the last 3 years. We have a very interactive Facebook page. We're on LinkedIn. You can like us there. Also Google+, Instagram, and again, the blog. You can find all of our connections on our main CMWorks page in the upper right-hand corner. You'll see the icons for these channels. You can just click on it. If you'd like to, you can also reach out to Peter or myself directly on LinkedIn. Just send us a request. We can connect with you there because we like to also share updates and things, or if you have any questions. So anyway, thank you so much for participating. We're sorry we've run out of time, but you'll be receiving a link to the recording in the next couple days. If not by tomorrow, then the latest by Monday. So thank you, everyone, and we wish you a nice weekend, okay? Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody.